3, so roughly 350 years ago. Originally, it was dug out by soldiers, Danish soldiers. There was a time when some people thought that this area was dug out by Swedish prisoners of war. But the years that we counted up, this area was dug out before we had electricity. So, most likely Danish soldiers. Now, coming up, we have the lowest bridge on the entire trip. This is the Nyhavn bridge, so please remain seated and keep your head down. Thank you very much. And originally, this area was known not as Nyhavn, but as Gyldenløve's canal, so the canal of Gyldenløve. Gyldenløve means golden lion, and it was a name given in the 1600s to all of the king's illegitimate children. So all of the children outside of marriage. And one of those children, he lived nearby in a big mansion, so of course it has to be named. But over the years, people just started talking about it as the New Harbor, and that was eventually the name that got stuck, and now it is the official one. Now today it is full, of course, as tourists such as yourselves, enjoying maybe a cold beer or an ice cream in the sun. But this area actually used to be full of sailors. This was the area where they came when they were on leave, especially in the side here on the left, which is also nicknamed the sunny side, as you can see, for obvious reasons. Now, the sunny side also was a place of small murky pubs, lots of tattoo parlors, and, of course, also prostitution. So the area has changed quite a bit over the past 15 years. Now, coming around the corner, we will have a big modern-looking building. It is the Playhouse of Copenhagen here on the left. It was built in 2008. And the first play that was performed here was Shakespeare's Hamlet. As you might know, of course, it takes place here in Denmark, in the town of Elsinore. Now here we are in the inner harbor trying to maneuver around this harbor bus here on the left. Work just like regular buses, only on water. You can use a regular transport ticket with these boats. On the other side, from the playhouse, we have this island here, which is called Papirøen, the Paper Island. It has this name because once this was a place of a big warehouse for paper. It's the name, of course. But originally, this island, together with 4 other islands, made up the area of the Navy, Holmen. On this particular island, back in the 1600s, 1700s, this is a place where the Navy kept cannons, gunpowder, cannonballs, all that kind of thing was stored here. Originally, it was further out in the center of the city. We're going to see that place later where they used to store it. It was moved out here because in there it was a little bit too much of a fire hazard. So if it exploded, it would be outside of the city. So that was better. Now on the paper island today, we have these big new buildings, and in one of those we have the most expensive apartment in Denmark, 10 million euros. So not exactly cheap. Roughly the equivalent of 17 million Danish kroner. That's the penthouse. Now on the right hand side here we have the Opera, also built on one of these old Navy islands. Next to it we have the Opera Park. Now underneath we have a big parking space area, and the park itself has been designed in a way that there's always something nice to look at, whether it's flowers, leaves, beautiful grasses, and also the bark of the trees. The opera itself was built in 2005, and there are 2 auditoriums. The biggest one can house 1,500 people, and the three front rows of the biggest auditorium, strictly speaking, actually is under the water. And it is, in fact, that the opera is bigger than you see it. There is a part of it that is also under the water, of course. Now, not everyone agrees with the metal band on the surface of the glass. They feel like it looks like a metal band on a toast machine. So some critics of the building have nicknamed it the toaster because of this. It is always sometimes like this with modern buildings. It can be a little bit divisive. Now in the distance we have a we have a grey building with a chimney on the side over there. It is Amager, so it is a very efficient power plant. It is so efficient that we have to import waste from elsewhere to get it up to full capacity. And it generates heat for, I think it's about 400 or 500,000 homes. Now, it's not just a power plant. On top, there's a small cafe. On the right-hand side, there are one of the highest climbing walls in Europe. And finally, of course, we have no mountains in Denmark, we have no mountains in Denmark, and all of the big hills are in Jutland, right? So, on the left-hand side of this building, we have a ski slope, an artificial ski slope. We have to build our own when we don't have many mountains. Now, the Navy hasn't left the area completely after being here for 300 years. In the 1990s, when it was moved elsewhere, this little area still belongs to the Navy since then. For the most part, however, these ships are museum artifacts. 3 of them are. Now, first we have the black submarine on land there. It was last used during the Iraq War. It was patrolling some of the waters around Iraq. And then we have the 2 boats here at the end. We have a green torpedo boat and a grey frigate. Those 2, they were in use during the Cold War. Now the frigate is a little bit infamous. In 1982, during an international exercise in Danish waters, it accidentally fired a missile into a summer house area on Western Sealand, destroying 4 homes, 4 summer houses, and damaging 130 other houses. Luckily, no one was harmed in this incident, and it was also due to a technical error, not a human error. And it was not an error that could have been noticed until they actually fired the missile. So, luckily, no one was to blame, and no one was harmed. Because of this, we could joke about it a little bit. So that's why this missile is today known as the Whoopsie missile. Now, on the right, we also have in front of this yellow building a tall building with a wooden structure on the roof. This is the old mast crane. So in the 1700s, this was one of 3 cranes that hoisted the masts onto the ships, readying them to sail. It could carry a weight of up to 20 tons. A lot of activity in the Navy in the area here. At one point in the 1700s, the Danish Navy was the 5th largest navy in Europe, quite big compared to the size of Denmark. But that all came to a halt in 1807 during the Napoleonic Wars, when the British fleet came to Copenhagen, bombarded the city, and then they took away our fleet to use it against Napoleon. So that's when all of that ended. Ahead of us, on the right-hand side, we have a grass-covered area with cannons. This is part of the old defense of Copenhagen in the 1700s, consisting of multiple batteries and also the Copenhagen Citadel. Now, the 2 small grey cannons in the middle are being used daily for the salutes, giving a signal to the ships in the harbour when to lower and hoist their flags. There's quite a lot of rules about that. They don't look like much, those 2 cannons, but they are quite loud. And it's probably not going to be long before they're going to be shut. Now, in the evening, it is always at sunset, so soon. But in the morning, it is not going to be at sunrise. Usually it is. But if you think about it, in the summer, the sun can get up as early as 4:30. And notice a lot of houseboats here next to it. You do not want to be woken up at 4:30 by a cannon. So, we have a compromise. It is 8 o'clock no matter the season. That's when the morning shot is fired. Also, the area here is called the Houseboat Harbour. They are behind it. It used to be, however, the sea mine trench. But not to worry, there are no sea mines there anymore. Yes, we do like bathing in the winter, in the autumn, in the spring. We do like saunas. Just like the Finns. On the right hand side here we have Refshaleø, Foxtail Island. In this spot we used to have a very big shipyard that was part of the company B&V, Burmeister and Main. It was this company who had the shipyard that, together with the German engineer Rudolf Diesel here in Copenhagen, developed the first diesel engine for ships. Now the area is used for more cultural things happening. So, for instance, in this area we have a festival for metal and rock music every summer, which is called Copenhagen. It was also in this area where we hosted the Eurovision contest in 2014. Here where it says Mikela, and where you can see there's a lot of people sitting out here, this is where we have a street food market. It's called crave. Also a thing you can do out here, maybe, just a thought, do it before you eat. The black and white crane there is used for bungee jumping. When they first opened it for this activities, they said to people, well, as a PR stunt, if you come and do the jump naked, you will get it for free. But they had to shut that down a little bit afterwards because a little bit too many people showed up naked. So yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's going to be too, yeah, we do need a little bit of cash, you know. On the right hand side, we have the area on the right. This is North Harbour. So this is the only part of Copenhagen Harbour where we still have salmon industry today. It used to be all over, now it's just here. You can also see that little island here on the right. This is the fork of Tacona with the red houses. This, together with other islands further out, was sea forts that was made as part of the defense of Copenhagen in the 1800s. So these islands, the defense was expanded. Maybe they became a bit more clever after they attacked by the British. Now, ahead of us on the right, we have the most well-known attraction in Copenhagen, and it is, of course, the Little Mermaid. Now, we're going to see it from the back. If you want to see it from the front, you're always welcome to take one of our buses. If you show the tickets at the ticket office, I think you can get a little bit of a discount on the bus as well. Now, the Little Mermaid, she's from 1913, and she was a gift to the city from the Carlsberg breweries. She has been a victim of vandalism on several occasions, including losing her head twice. The last time she lost it, we could not find it again, so we had to make a new one for her. She also, the Little Mermaid, has the dubious honor of once being voted the second most disappointing attraction in Europe. The only one slightly more disappointing than her was a statue of a little boy peeing in Brussels. So that name is Manning Piss, and he's also only about 60 centimeters tall. So he is smaller than she is, but she is on a very honorable second place, or shall I say dishonorable second place. On the right hand side here we have a beautiful glass building. This is the pavilion used for weddings, Christmas parties, etc. The pavilion you see here today is from the 1950s and replaced an older view of the ceremony, which was destroyed during World War II by the Nazis. On the right hand side here we have the Churchill Park under all of these cherry blossom trees. And if you see above these trees we have a column with a picture on the top. This is the memorial of Admiral Ivar Huitfeldt and his crew. Ivar Huitfeldt, he was admiral in the Great Northern War of the 1700s, 1720. Him and his crew lost their lives during a battle, then their ship exploded. And at the base of this column we have some cannons. Those cannons in that column are actually the real cannons from the real ship that was retrieved. Now, coming up on the right hand side, you have these two pavilions. This is from these pavilions the royal family goes aboard the royal ship for the summer trips around the world, visiting different parts of the country. And the ship is usually moored over here on the left, where you can see that yellow buoy over there where I hold my hand. So there are these small boats staying from these two pavilions and out to the yellow buoy over there. On the right hand side here we have this big grey building complex. Now this building complex is today the headquarters of Maersk. Now Maersk is today the second largest shipping company in the world. They are operating in over 100 countries. This particular building we have on the right has been nicknamed the House of the Blue Eyes, of course because of the blue tint of the windows. Who knows, in the future they might succeed MSC, which is the largest at the moment. You can see they are expanding their headquarters as we speak. Also, some people are like, which company is actually the biggest? I think MSC have more ships than Maersk do, but the Maersk ships are bigger and better equipped. So even though we have fewer ships in this company, I think as a total we can actually carry more cargo. So it's like potato. On the right hand side we have these three warehouses. These are from the 1700s where we also had colonies and where we also took part in the slave trade. So the first one was the West Indian warehouse. We had a small colony in the Caribbean where things came to this place. Things like sugar and coffee. The one in the middle was for goods that came in from Greenland. Greenland started out as a colony in the 1720s and actually remained a colony all the way up until 1953. These days, of course, they are still part of the world and they have their own government. They make their own decisions. Just throwing it out there. The red one here at the end is just goods that came in from Africa. So we had a small colony on the Gold Coast in what's today Ghana. So things like ivory came to that spot. Now the first warehouse is today a museum, while the other two instead. Talking about people living in old buildings, here on the right hand side, underneath the sun, we have the royal residence of Availed Palace. Availed Palace was not built for the royal family originally, actually. They were built for 4 noble families. That is why we see 4 identical buildings. The royal family moved in 1794. Why? Because their own home at the time, Christiansborg Palace, burned down to the ground. So they become homeless, therefore they bought this area, or bought this building. Now, the church you can see in the background is the Church of Frederick. It is named after Frederick V, who's also the guy on the sculpture there. However, most Danes know this church as the Marble Church. It also has the biggest church dome in all of Scandinavia. Mind you, we do not have a lot of domed churches in Scandinavia, so it's not like the competition is very hard, you know. Domed churches tend to be a little bit more of a South European thing, Central European thing. Now we are sailing towards the area in front of us, which we can always recognize by the church tower with the golden staircase. This is the area of Christianshavn. And I'm already explaining a little bit about this area now, because as soon as we get into the canal there's a silent zone. It's a very big residential area, and that's why. The rest of the trip is all public area. This is a residential zone. Now, the area of Christianshavn ahead of us, Christianshavn means Christian's harbor. It is named after King Christian IV, and this king, he is our most famous king in history, or at least in Danish history, because he built a lot of things in Copenhagen and beyond, and he also spent a lot of money going to war against Sweden, although not very successful. Now, when he built this area, he did so with as an effort to attract Dutch merchants to move here, generate some income, and generate some taxes, you know, always in the need for a little bit of extra cash. And that's why, when you sail into the canal here, it looks a little bit like a Dutch canal. It's not a coincidence. The king also employed a Dutch architect to build the area. And like the Navy Islands here on the left, this area here, Christianshavn, was also an artificial island. So all of this is man-made. It used to be all water here on both sides. Now, the Dutch didn't move in. So it ended up being Danish sailors, Danish merchants, and ultimately Danish workers that moved in instead. And the area was only built completely up with buildings 100 years after it was started. For the 1800s and for the most part of the 1900s, it was very much a poor workers' quarter. And especially in the 1970s, several of the old buildings were in a very bad shape and had to be condemned. Despite a lot of protests by squatters, there was a lot of housing crisis. So a lot of people, demonstrated and made actions against the police in the 1970s. Lots of action going on in this area. But unfortunately, a lot of it had to be torn down. It was in too bad shape. One thing that is still existing back from the 1970s that was ultimately originally squatted is the free town of Christiania, the commune. They occupied old military buildings, and that community is still going strong. Of course, not with our problems on the way, but they are still going strong, and it is an area you can visit. That is Christiania. And for now, I'll be quiet for a bit. Now you can hear a church tower. This is the Church of Our Savior on the Golden Staircase. So if you want a camera of this church tower, be ready with your camera already now. Point it in this direction, so to the left and a little bit to the back. You have to be quick. You do not have a lot of time. So in this direction.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Now if you're a little bit too slow, you'll get a picture not of the church tower, but of this tree instead. And for the same reason, this tree is known as the most photographed tree in all of Copenhagen. Because of this, it has, I've been told, its own Facebook group where people upload pictures into. I don't know how active it is, but yeah. Most photographed tree in Copenhagen. Now, coming up ahead, we have the Child House Bridge, which is named after a children's home and women's prison that used to be here on the left-hand side back in the old days. The Child House Bridge is the lowest bridge in this canal. So once again, please remain seated and keep your head down. Thank you very much. But of course, the silence will continue to the bridge. Now, if you want to explore this area a little bit more, we do have a metro that goes up to the area, and you just go to the station of Nyhavn. And you can see the metro station here on the left of the bridge. You can see the sign there. So there it is. maybe we still have a silent zone. So the bridge ahead of us is the Circle Bridge, designed by Danish-Icelandic designer Olafur Eliasson. And notice the white poles with the wires hanging down from the top. They are symbolizing the mast and rigging on ships, on old sailing ships. So reflecting the maritime history of the city. And we are now sailing under the bridge where it opens. So instead of opening up and down like most bridges, this one actually opens sideways instead. Now, coming up ahead, we have this black building. This is the Black Diamond. It is made out of black granite imported from Zimbabwe. And it is an extension to the Royal Library. The old library building is still behind it. Now, it is one of the largest national collections in Europe, I think we have in here. I think it's about 70,000 books and 30,000 old manuscripts, something like that. The old library building is still visible, of course, behind the new building. They are connected so you can go from one to the other, but imagine or see behind the old library building here on the right, there are some trees over there. So this is the library garden, but imagine in the 1600s not having trees there. Instead it used to be ship's masts. So that over there, that area over there was actually filled up with water and was a small harbor for the navy actually. Now we are sailing into this canal of Nyhavn, which has no fewer than 9 bridges. So mind your head again and remain seated, of course. I am really repeating myself, but it is very important. Here we have blocks, among other things, Danish Architectural Center, as you can see. So good place to visit if you are interested in architecture. Mind your head, thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have to go back once again to Christian IV and his many buildings in Copenhagen and beyond. Here on the right, we have yet another one. This is the brew house. So this is where they used to make beer. In the 1600s, it was not uncommon to get 10 liters of beer per day as your salary, but you had to share. You had to share with your family, so you wouldn't drink 10 liters by yourself. You know, that's not very healthy. Sharing with your family also meant that children would be served beer as well. The water quality back then was very, very poor, so drinking beer was actually a matter of survival. It was one of the only ways you could be hydrated, actually. On the right-hand side, here we have a light vessel that used to function as floating lighthouses. When they were active, we had 25 of those around Denmark. 6 of them have survived. Several of them, like this one, is a houseboat. But we do have one light vessel that has been turned into a museum, which you can see in the harbor of Elsinore in North Zealand. Here we have a boat, as you can see, not a houseboat, but a massage parlor. So if you have some aching muscles, this is the place to go. And also, I mentioned earlier that Christiansborg Palace had burned down to the ground. The side buildings, they survived the fire of 1794, and those are the buildings you can see here on the right. Can you see the 2 crowns at the top of the pavilions? That shows you that, of course, this used to be a royal palace back in the old days. Also part of this old building complex, we have this bridge. This bridge that is sticking its tongue out, as you can see, is the Marble Bridge. And just like the church you saw earlier, this is not made out of marble either. So it's just all in the name, a little bit of false advertising. But it is the oldest existing bridge in Copenhagen. Now, the next bridge is called the Straw Bridge, and this is the most narrow bridge on the entire trip. So here it is important that everyone do, again, as you do now, hands knees and elbows in. You know, don't want anything to get stuck. Otherwise you might end up in an ambulance. And as we said under, you can see the black lines. This is where we sometimes hit the boat. And when we sail out from under the bridge, our captain also has to do another maneuver. He has to, as we say in Denmark, turn on a plate. He makes a 90-degree turn. And those of you who are sitting at the end, close to the water, just be extra mindful of your head. As we're turning around, you're getting quite close to the bridge. Now, on the right-hand side, here you can see this yellow building. This is the Thorvaldsen Art Museum. Now, Thorvaldsen was a famous Danish sculptor in the first half of the 1800s. You can find his artwork in several European countries, including in the Vatican State. As the only non-Catholic sculptor, he was allowed to make something for the Vatican and for the St. Peter's Basilica. He made the monument over Pope Pius VII. So if you're ever in the Vatican, try and look it up. Now, talking about churches, next to it we have Christiansborg Palace Church, and the Christiansborg Palace burned down once. It also burned down twice. So after the first one burnt, they rebuilt it, the second one burnt. And this church is one of the only things that remains after that second building. So this was built in a neoclassical style of the beginning of the 1800s. Now, on the left, we have this statue. This is Bishop Absalon. He is a very big, influential figure in Danish medieval history and Copenhagen history. He was the first, well, we thought, for a long time, we thought he was founding Copenhagen in the 1100s. However, he did not. Copenhagen is older than that. But he did build a fortress here on the Castle Island, where you see Christiansborg Palace today. He was the first one to fortify the area, so he was the first one to make it possible for Copenhagen to grow and become bigger, and eventually it became the capital in the 1400s. Now this, as you might have guessed, is the third version of Christiansborg Palace. This one dates back to the 1920s. Today, of course, it is no longer the home of the royal family. It is the Parliament, the Supreme Court, and the Prime Minister's offices that are in Christiansborg today. The statue in front of the building is of Frederick VII, and he is the king who in 1849 signed our constitution, thus giving us our first version of democracy. It wasn't until 1915 that women could actually vote. I'm almost sorry to say it, but we do have to return once again to Christian IV. You can really get an idea of how big of a builder he was. He also built the round tower, but also these two buildings here was also the work of Christian IV. So here we have the Church of the Navy. However, especially the low part of it started out as a smithy. This is where they used to make anchors before it was a church. And notice the middle window there on the side, not a real window, it's painted on. False advertising, just like the Marble Bridge. On the right hand side we have the old stock exchange, or we used to. You can see a picture of what it used to look like, but in April last year it burned down. It was quite a big tragedy because last year was actually the 400-year anniversary of the building, and it was being renovated for all these celebrations. But it did not survive being renovated last year. After this building actually, for 400 years, it was known as the building that couldn't burn. It survived 2 great fires of Copenhagen in the 1700s, and it also survived the British bombardment. But 2024 it was over. You can see the scaffolding here on the right hand side. That is all of the building that survived. That's behind the scaffolding. On the left we have the National Bank, built in 1978. And the grey stone on the surface here, in contrast to both the church that we saw earlier, actually, marble church, and also the bridge. Both of them, despite the name, are not made out of marble, but this is marble. Just throwing it out there. This is Norwegian marble. And here we have Kayak Park, which is a nice place to visit and have a cold beer, just like Nyhavn. Also, Kayak Republic here at the end, place where you can rent some kayaks. Coming up on the right hand side, here we have 3 greyish buildings, which quite a lot of activity in those buildings at present, because these buildings here is the Danish Foreign Ministry. Also, you can see here behind it, we have once again the Church of Our Savior. As you can see, we are now in the inner harbour of Copenhagen once again, and ahead of us, on the left hand side, you can see a light green building. There's a small clock tower over there. It is built in the 1930s in a style called Art Deco, and because it is a nice example of it here in Copenhagen, this building has been protected by law, so you can never tear it down. Originally it was built as a customs office. There's also been a jazz club and a gourmet restaurant inside. But today, inside here, you cannot just go in because it is a private club for self-employed people, so you have to have a membership these days. So that's the green building here on the left. Ahead of us, on the right, we have a yellow brick building. There are some flagpoles in front of it, orange roof. That building, that area, is the North Atlantic Quay, and that is where the ships used to sail to the North Atlantic areas of the realm. So of course, Greenland and the Faroe Islands, they are also still part of the realm, but this also used to include Iceland. Iceland was part of the realm up until 1944, when they made something good out of a very bad situation, a bad time in history. During the Second World War, we were occupied by the Nazis, they were occupied by the Allied forces. We had no contact for several years, so what do? You say goodbye to Denmark. You declare your independence. And that is why the Second World War, even today in Iceland, to some people, are named as the Blessed War, because that's where they got rid of us. It is still connected to the North Atlantic, this area. For instance, we do have the Icelandic embassy here today, so no hard feelings. On the left hand side here, of course, we are back in Nyhavn, so we're getting towards the end of our trip. Now, I told you in the beginning that in this area we had lots of tattoo parlors. Now, if you want to do as sailors in the old days and get a tattoo made here in Nyhavn, you do still have the opportunity, because one of these tattoo parlors actually survived, and I will, after the bridge, point it out to you where it is. Although, of course, I don't think they're open now. You know, I probably have to wait till tomorrow. And for one last time, I have to repeat myself, of course. Here we have, once again, the lowest bridge on the trip. So once again, do what you do now and remain seated. Thank you very much. Sometimes the water level can be even higher, and then we cannot sail into the canal at all. But that's probably not the case today. Now, before I point out the tattoo parlor, I will just quickly tell you that it is also here in Nyhavn where you will find the most narrow house in the whole of Copenhagen. Because it is only 2 meters wide and pointy, so tall and pointy, it has been nicknamed the pencil because of this. So, look for the white house here in the corner, and you can see the pencil just to the left of it. Here it is, Nyhavn number 4, big square windows and green door. Can you see it? It's just there. Now, the tattoo parlor, Nyhavn number 17, in the basement. That is the place to go for a tattoo. That was the end of our trip. I hope you have learned something you didn't know already. Please remain seated until we have docked the boat. When we give you a signal to leave, that is when you can leave, and of course not 1 minute before. And as I've already mentioned, you're always welcome to, if you have any questions as you leave the boat, you're more than welcome to ask, and I'll try to answer them if I can. Otherwise, have a great evening in Copenhagen and a great time the rest of your stay, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I'll turn on the